We don't have a lot of sponsorship, but we do have some. We really thank Walsh College for allowing us to be here. So thank you to President Kelleher and her team. They've done a wonderful job. Northwood University has always been a sponsor, so thank you, President Fritty. And Macmillan Education has also sponsored today's event. So again, thank you to our sponsors. In the bag. So no, it's not what's going to happen later on after you get a few drinks. What's in the bag? Just so you know, you've got some nice giveaways there. You certainly have the agenda. We have the program. Also, you got the speaker bios are in there for you to review. Also, some nice giveaways from Michigan Schools and Government Credit Union. We have the cell phone case. If your lips get chapped, Baker's got your back. So there's some chapstick there. There's a picture magnet from Schoolcraft. Notepad and pen from Walsh. That'll come in handy today. And certainly the wireless earbuds. Keep these close to the vest because your kids will want to steal them from you. It's kind of cool. They're Bluetooth-enabled wireless earbuds, and they're very popular, and I hope you will enjoy using them. Again, it pairs up to 30 feet away, so you could actually have your phone 30 feet away and you can still be engaged in conversation. So hope you'll enjoy the gifts that you got in your bags. Today's agenda, so it's going to be a busy day. For 17 years, we've really tweaked the agenda back and forth. You know, do we have keynote presenters? Do we have roundtable discussions? We've got a mixture of a lot of great things for you today. We're going to start off with the executive roundtable. We then have Dr. Stephen Elliott, who's coming from Purdue University. I think you'll really appreciate his presentation. We'll then certainly have a break for lunch. And then we have a panel discussion that Drew Smith here from Walsh College is going to lead. And then we've got a great presentation with the Baker team, Baker College, regarding how they're supporting their online students. And then lastly, we've got a really nice summary of the survey that was sent out to the member institutions. It's always nice to hear what's happening locally versus nationally. So it's really great to be able to get that perspective. And last but not least, and if you sneak out, and I know some of you will, you can't participate in the raffle, and there's a lot of great raffle prizes, so hopefully you'll stick around. We'll get you out of here, right around 2:33. So the mission of the Alliance. The Alliance is a coalition of members from educational institutions, vendors, and corporate partners dedicated really to advancing the quality of online pedagogy by continuously upgrading online educational experiences. It's really for you, the faculty, and the staff, as well as students. It's really our mission. And it's really important to know that we focus on this every year when we put this event together. I just want to give you a little insight to what's happening with regard to what's, the trends in online. The Distance Education Enrollment Report comes out of the Online Learning Consortium. And there's individual organizations that are part and parcel to this, the Babson Survey Research Group, eLiterate, and WCET. These are organizations that put together this survey that happened in 2017. So growth of online learning. So do you know how it's and how much is happening? So we're going to quiz you right now. So what is the number of higher education students taking at least one distance education course in 2015? What is the number of higher education students taking at least one distance education course in 2015? Any guesses? No? All right, we're going to give you the answer. It's over 6 million. 6 million. Think about the growth in online. What is the year-to-year percentage increase of distance education students from 2014 to 2015? What is it, 50?
Yeah.
A little high. 3.9% increase over the previous 2 years. Now, do know overall education is reducing. Online, if you just look at the online segment, it's actually increasing, even though at only 3.9%. During this time period, what is the percentage of students who took at least one online course? Percentage of students that took at least one online course? 74%, a little high, a little robust, almost 30%. So 30%, at least of all students, are taking at least one online course. And so you can see the numbers there. You guys are not doing very well. What percentage of overall enrollment of distance education students come from public institutions? Now, we know private has been involved in online as well, but public institutions. So what percentage of overall come from public institutions?
17.
Low. Way low. No. It's almost 2/3. So basically 2/3 of all students come from public institutions. Large enrollment drops among for-profit institutions were driven by only a few of the largest organizations, and the majority of the for-profits actually grew their distance enrollments. So it's growing still. Now, between 2002 and 2015, 2012 and 2015, what is the drop in the number of students studying on a college or university campus? So students that have left the campus and are now studying pretty much online.
25%.
It's almost 1 million students. Isn't that amazing? Almost 1 million students are no longer on the campuses. They're actually now leveraging the technology that's available to them. So that's why this is important. That's why we're here today, is to talk about best practices and to really think about how we can evolve with the evolution of our students, right? So when I teach a class, I have students that are 18 to 50 years of age, and so it's understanding their needs and being able to support those needs. And today's focus is really on student support and supporting our students the best way we can in this amazing environment called distance education. So, what do I wish for you today? Somebody please laugh at my cartoon. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I want you to be engaged. Hopefully, I want you to discover. Certainly want you to learn. Certainly want you to apply what you learn. And network. We're going to get you to network. I'm going to mix you guys up, I promise you. And we're going to hopefully enjoy the day. So, but I'd like to introduce the president of Walsh College, Marcia Kelleher. President Kelleher came to Walsh as president and CEO in 2017, bringing decades of academic leadership, teaching, business, and legal experiences to her role. Prior to joining Walsh, she served as dean of the Sigmund Weiss School of Business, where she spearheaded the development of 4 new majors. President Kelleher is a strong advocate of higher quality online education. Certainly here at Walsh, she's taken the mantle from her predecessors and done an amazing job in supporting online learning. The Alliance thanks you, President Kelleher, for allowing us to hold the symposium here at Walsh and for your unwavering commitment to excellence in online education. So it's my pleasure to introduce the president of Walsh College, Marcia Kelleher.
It's funny, I have to take my glasses off so I can see you. Walsh College has been offering courses, online courses, since 1990. Can you hear me? No. Since 1998. And we're pleased to be one of the sponsors of this conference, especially since the focus is best practices to support students in an online environment. How many of you have designed an online course before? How many of you have taught an online course before? How many of you have done neither? Back in, let's say, the day, I was one of the first instructors to design and teach a course at one of the institutions that I come from. And back then, most of my colleagues were fairly critical and cynical. They thought it was a fad, online, just a fad. We can never be as effective teaching as when we are lecturing at our graduate students for 3 hours and 40 minutes in one night. This is a waste of resources, and employers will never pay for online education. Look where we are today. Employers are designing their own. We just saw the wonderful statistics that Dr. Callahan shared. In one survey, 1/3 of the students said they fully expected to take their entire program online. In another, and the other 1/3 indicated that they thought it would be a mix back and forth. Only 1/3 said that they expected to take their entire education in a traditional classroom. It's pretty amazing. We also know, though, that online students, especially those who are already struggling, are often not as successful as students in a traditional classroom, which underscores the need for this conference and for us to share best practices. So Dr. Patrick Callahan, I commend you and your team for bringing us together today, and I'm sure we'll all learn quite a bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. Our beginning presentation is going to be the Executive Roundtable, and I'll introduce the participants in the roundtable. First, I'm going to introduce our moderator, and it's President Russell Kawahuna. He joined Henry Ford College as the institution's 6th president in July of last year. This role unites his passions for public service, education, and institutional leadership. As a son of an immigrant who attended a Michigan Community College, he believes the community college model of education and service is the gateway to the American dream. It's my pleasure to introduce our moderator for the Executive Roundtable, President Kawahuna from Henry Ford College. Members of the Executive Roundtable, I'm going to get you guys to get up now, please. Just sit at the table here, please. President Priddy from Northwood University joined Northwood University as President and CEO on October 2nd, 2006. He came to Northwood from Walsh. He was Vice President for External Affairs and General Counsel at Western Michigan University and President and CEO of the Western Michigan University Foundation. President Priddy was very instrumental in the establishment of the Alliance for Excellence in Online Education, as he supported the original idea and was key in providing the personnel and financial support to establish its charter in 2003. So welcome, President Priddy. Also, Peter Provenzano is on our panel. Chancellor Provenzano is the 9th Chancellor of Oakland Community College. He began his duties on January 1st of 2018. So they're still giving him a hard time because he's the new kid on the block. Now, since joining Oakland Community College, Chancellor Provenzano has led several major initiatives, including refreshing the strategic plan, expanding global partnerships, launching the college's first comprehensive brand campaign, Excellence Empowered, which is the name of that, and investing in campus infrastructure and building relationships. Again, it's my pleasure to introduce Chancellor Provenzano. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Callahan. Excuse me. Good morning. How is everyone? Good. I saw the raising of hands for those who have either developed, I think it was developed and delivered an online course. And I was excited about that because I could see at least 90% of the hands went up. And I'll say only one of the 4 of us executives' hands went up. And one of them, well, let me say this, one of them was not mine. But I'm struck by what I can trigger your memory and can give you an idea of what I plan to do in this panel. How many people remember the show, The Donahue Show? Okay, see, it's impressive that you have this many people who know that and also have developed an online course. Well, I remember that show, and I remember that Donahue would go up and down the aisles. And I thought it was a pretty effective way, both physically and communicatively, to engage the audience. And I think that's probably what I'll conduct here, primarily because you have executives here who have the power to affect their institutions in the spaces you're working, but a little less experience, at least with respect to me, in doing what you all do. So my hope is, by moving amongst you and asking questions kind of from your perspective, and then frankly asking you to ask the questions, you'll have an opportunity to both inform us, the panel, with your questions, and an opportunity for you to get some answers from those who are kind of making those tough decisions on this space you're working. So one of the ways that I'll do that is asking you questions, but before I start doing that, I'll give these executives an opportunity to give us kind of their idea of where they are in the online space in each of their institutions. And my hope is, we've all been to conferences, we've all been to panels, and they can be pretty boring. My hope is that that's not the case. So I will be physically moving, and I hope that if you have a question that pops in your head, I have to be honest with you, your questions I think are more valuable than mine. So if you have a question, raise your hand. If you want to riff on one topic we're talking about, please do that. My goal is to have this be informative, not so stifling that it seems like a conference. And my hope is that we can have an enjoyable conversation. We have about 60 minutes. So does anyone have any questions about how we're going to proceed? All right. President Kelleher, this building is amazing. From a community college standpoint, I am envious. Tell us about how your institution handles online and if it's as amazing as this building is.
Even more so.
Oh, is your mic on?
This should be good.
Now it's on, I think. Try it again.
Hello?
It's got a dot on it now. Is anyone's mic working? Yes. President Provenzano, is it not working now?
Hello?
There you
I think
go.
that's
There
working.
we go.
You guys make it easy.
When I was interviewing, one of the things that impressed me with Walsh was the intentionality and the level of resources devoted to online learning. I referenced that when I was back in the day creating courses, what they did was they trained me in how to do HTML and then set me free. A very dangerous thing to do. As a dean, what I would do is I would give faculty members a pass on the first 3 times that they would deliver an online course because they really didn't know how to structure those courses. So imagine when I came here and I heard about this 5-step process where first faculty actually apply to be able to create a course. By the way, we have a nice brochure on this. So there's an actual application, then there's a contract for the development of the course, there's an actual standardized syllabus, and then they begin mapping the goals, the student learning outcomes, the activities, and the assessment. At this point, they're paired with one of 7 of our instructional designers. So it's those instructional designers with the expertise that work with the faculty to transform those learning goals into a dynamic and interactive learning environment. Once that's done, then there's this several-page course evaluation rubric that goes over the quality of the syllabus, the quality of the weekly activities, the technology and the assessment methods. And before a course can go live, they have to earn a 90% on this particular document. I have to tell you, I was very, very impressed during the interview process. And since being here, I've just become more impressed with the faculty who devote the time and the energy to teach online. The support that's provided through our online department is really quite exceptional. And then once we get a course launched, it's time for review and refresh. So one of the reasons why I took this position was because I was so impressed with the thoughtful and intentional approach that Walsh has taken, thanks to my predecessors sitting next to me. And I'm really proud to be able to continue with that type of support.
So, President Priddy, I assume you can take credit for all that wonderful background.
Absolutely, yes, of course.
Well, tell us about that and or what you are doing at your institution.
Sure. I think this is on. And okay, good. I was interested to hear, Marcia, that you said Walsh College started online courses in 1998. I arrived here almost 20 years ago next month. In fact, that's exactly what it was, in 1999, and I didn't see any online courses when I got here. There were a couple, I guess. But the interest in online learning from both our students and from our faculty here at Walsh definitely existed. And the opportunity to build an online program was great. There was certainly the kind of dissidence that you get everywhere as you go through any mechanism of change. But I found the faculty here to be open and honest and forthright, and they certainly There were those that said they would never teach online. There were faculty that taught online immediately and taught effectively online immediately. And I think that's true in virtually every organization in higher ed. We're blessed to have great diversity among our faculty, and not all of our faculty should ever teach online, in my opinion. There are some that are gifted classroom teachers, and there are some that simply probably wouldn't work as well in an online format. So the growth here at Walsh has been extraordinary, and from my perspective, expected. I really believed when I got to know the faculty and staff here that this institution would flourish in an online environment, and we could see even 20 years ago the demand from students for online learning. That was clearly on the way and growing every single session, every single semester, every single year. And it's interesting that this alliance is celebrating its 17th anniversary, its 17th symposium that it's had, so that all of you together across this region have helped each other to learn over that same time frame, and have really helped to mature the programs at all of our academic institutions during the last 17 years. And because we were an early adapter, at that point, I was part of Walsh, we're very, very proud of that. That's one of the reasons that Northwood continues to sponsor each year, because this is an organization that really does make a difference in terms of sharing best practices in a very growing environment. And I'm pleased to say that my circumstance when I arrived at Northwood 7 years later wasn't a lot different than it was at Walsh. We, at that point, still didn't have significant online learning in 2006, 2007, but there was a sincere desire by the faculty and some of the staff to really take what we did have and to meet the needs of our customers, to meet the needs of our students, and to grow our online programming. And today, at the undergraduate level, every course we offer at the undergraduate level, we now offer online, because there's demand for it. We offer most of our graduate classes online. And we are about to roll out a new doctoral program at Northwood, and that, large components of that will be done online. So it's clearly a big part of the growing market. If you look at national markets, if you look at what's happening in our higher education world in this country, we need to be online. We need to be able to reach students wherever they are, whether that's physically or where they are in their academic programs, where they are in their work and personal life, and the balance that needs to be there, and where they are emotionally. And I think most progressive schools are growing rapidly, and you're seeing some models, you're seeing some schools define their complete growth on online and actually walking away from classroom learning, which it's not something that I necessarily agree with, but it works for certain institutions. We're in a time of great change, and the technology of online learning has led a big part of that change. So I'm pleased to be here with you today and to share a little bit, because as was noted by Russ, there's only one of us here that is really a technical expert. My role is to help set the vision and to find the resources and allocate those resources to make sure we meet the vision at our institution. I'm not involved in the day-to-day details, but it is an area that every institution, in my opinion, needs to be a part of, and certainly I've been blessed to be a part of two institutions that have grasped it and really developed online learning in significant ways for the benefit of the institution in each case, but most importantly for the benefit of the students.
Chancellor Provenzano, you and I represent, because I'm not going to answer any questions, you represent the community college space. What can you tell us about what's happening at Oakland Community College on the online front?
So first I'm going to take this microphone off the stand because, as you know, I'm Italian, so I like to talk with my hands. And it's liable that I will chuck this stand across to Patty before you know it. So we're seeing, community colleges are seeing the same demand for online learning as universities. In fact, we've done a number of surveys over the last year or so that I've been in office of our students, and that's what we hear loud and clear from our students. They want more and more classes online or programs online. Now, as really all of us, it presents some challenges because OCC, like the other institutions that are represented here, we have a long tradition of being a very high quality, a reputation of having high quality at affordable price. And we don't want to lose that when we start to scale this out and we go online. And so we've taken a very deliberate approach to doing this in a very, with an eye on quality. And when I say that, because not only do we need the infrastructure to support, but we also need the services. Many of our students are higher touch. They need a little bit more hand-holding. And so we've taken an approach, and it's been very methodical, as I said, where we have a online readiness course that our students have to take prior to taking any online courses. Our faculty go through a very rigorous training program because, as we discussed, not all faculty have ever taught online. Not all faculty have ever taken an online course. And so we want to make sure we don't lose that quality. And so we started by building an awesome team, like anything. So when something really tremendous happens, it starts with an awesome team. And so we have a number of them actually represented here. Kayla LeBlanc, who's our dean, and her team is here. We pulled a lot of those folks away from IT, underneath the IT umbrella, and we put them directly under academic affairs for obvious reasons. And then we expanded that team. And then we started collaborating. We started collaborating with our faculty, with our counselors. In fact, I see faculty and counselors all represented here from OCC. And you can see we're all working together to make sure that that quality stays. And, as we mentioned, online learning is not for everyone. It's not for every student. And it's not for every faculty member to teach. And so we really see this approach working well and taking it slow because I kind of liken it to, autonomous vehicles. Ford, which is right in your backyard, Russ, and the big three automakers are really wrestling with this idea that they have to go autonomous, but yet for the next X number of years, the reality is drivers still want gasoline-powered vehicles. So how do you do both? And I really think that that's the value of this symposium, is talking about how do you transition to do more and more online learning, because that's where the growth is. We have declining K-12 population, and I really see distance education as the future of education, especially at OCC, and we're doubling down. We're doubling down on distance education. So,
Well, I'm glad you brought Kayla up. I was at your investiture, Chancellor, and she's an all-business lady. She cornered me and asked me, what are you guys doing online? What's working, what's not working? And I said, well, I just came to see your Chancellor get invested. I don't know the answers to your questions. So you picked the right leader.
Yeah.
President Priddy, you mentioned meeting students where they are, and that's a phrase that a lot of us in higher education have heard, and I think you'd be crazy not to agree with that. But it's a different answer, I think, to meet a student where they are physically versus meet a student where they are electronically or online. What are your thoughts about the best practices to meet students where they are online, and any part of the spectrum that we meet students? I'd be interested in your view. The recruitment, the academic support, and then the retention and success. What are best practices for meeting students where they are?
Well, as we say, meeting students where they are, no two students, particularly online, are in the same place. I mean, so the diversity of the student populations that we choose to deal with, particularly online, is dramatic and almost different in every single circumstance. So it requires, to some extent, individualized solutions to do that. And it starts, as you said, Russ, right in the recruitment process. And all of our institutions, I'm sure we talk about processes, and we've got to have the right processes, and everything has to flow from one to the next, and that is very important, and I'm a firm believer in that. We have a very strong continuous improvement culture at Northwood University, and processes have helped us significantly. But in my personal view, it's all about communication. It's all about how we communicate right from the beginning, right from the admissions process, the recruitment process, how we put ourselves out into the marketplace, the expectations we set for students. And when a student suddenly sees an ad or something else that maybe builds their focus toward our institution or any particular institution, how quickly and how effectively do we communicate with that student? That really establishes that relationship. And I think many students are becoming very savvy to that, particularly online students that are working from wherever. Many of them are doing this on top of full-time jobs. They're doing it on top of families and community responsibilities. They're often doing their work through the middle of the night and on weekends and times when historically higher education hasn't been very supportive to students' needs. So how we go about recruiting and the promises we make in the recruitment process are critical to what we are then obligated to provide as we educate these students online. We're fortunate that we have a number of systems in place. We use a number of different software opportunities. We have, a Center for Excellence on our campus, which is extraordinary. The talent that we've been able to assemble there is so good. But it all starts with how we recruit the student and then how we train and assist the faculty member in providing online education. And all of the various services that you're providing to that student, in addition to the classroom outcomes, the outcomes for this specific course or this particular curriculum, the total gamut of services that you are providing to that student, including career placement opportunities. It has changed the institution that I'm currently at in many, many ways, and one of those is our Career Advancement Office now has to work very different hours than they did just a couple of years ago. They have to be available nights and weekends. Faculty, of course, clearly know that they have to be available to their students at all kinds of different hours and in different ways. We found, for instance, using simple technology like BlueJeans to be able to communicate face-to-face with our students when they need help has been extraordinarily valuable in meeting the students where they are and helping them to take next steps. It's also very valuable in helping students to interact with other students. One of the toughest things in today's world, and in good old traditional classrooms, you came at a specified time and you sat in a room like this and you saw your peer students and you could develop contact with them on the break, and you could watch who asked the best questions and build your own study groups and begin to really help one another to learn in a specific class. When you're taking an online course, obviously that's not the case. And so building cohorts, building commonality, building the relationships student to student, not just student to the faculty, is of critical importance, we find, in ultimately the success of our online learners. So everything from start to finish is critical in the process of meeting those students where they are and making sure that they have all the resources they need. And it's different in every case, but the resources they need to be successful in their academic program at your institution and ultimately beyond. Because quite frankly, at an institution like ours, which is a specialty institution, and we are focused exclusively on the business disciplines, one of the greatest assets we give our graduates is a network of business professionals that are all over the globe. But if you've been taking your courses online, alone, from your home office or your work office or wherever, and sometimes on vacation you're doing it from the beach or whatever, you don't have a network. You're not seeing those colleagues, students. You're not understanding the value that some of those individuals could have to your career and to your success, both in the classroom and beyond. So building those kinds of systems via communication is critical, we believe, to the success of our online students.
So Marcia and Peter, I want to expand on this line that Keith has just set up, and I'll just lay a foundation that I hope you'll agree with me for those of us in the audience. For executives, one of the things that we're always confronting is how to answer the challenge that President Priddy just laid out, which is taking care of each individual student's needs that makes every opportunity for them to be as successful as possible. Balanced against the cost to deliver as much of that service, because at the end, when we're sitting with our teams, we have to recognize we literally cannot afford to do 100% of what President Priddy just laid out. Now, a layer on top of that, the dynamic that Peter laid out about us trying to move as an institution, the institution of education, from a traditional method to an innovative method that many of us are not aware of or understanding of. What are some things, and even just strategic examples of ways to answer the question that President Priddy just laid out? What are some ways that you all have seen to help answer some of the questions that online students need? And those of us that have taught, we know that there's a web of higher education institution support mechanisms, from counselors to advisors to, and we know that the faculty themselves often are the front line on this, to admissions officers, to career advice. What have you learned that works well for the dynamic of the online student that is either just a nice transfer from on-ground students, or is something completely different than on-ground that you've had to develop online, that also can make it through your analysis of return on investment? Because, folks, one of the hardest things to do as an administrator is to judge how much resource to put into this. That's new to us. So the hard questions are starting now.
That's a great question, and it's interesting. I was literally just smiling at Kayla because we just had this conversation just a couple days ago about putting a business plan together. And so I have a finance background, and there's so many moving parts to all of this, and we're trying to juggle it, and it's dangerous because when things get complicated as human beings, we tend to just sort of set it aside and say, well, I'll deal with it later. And we know that, I mean, look at these numbers. We can't, it's here. The demand is here. We have to do something now. And so I don't have a great answer as far as how you continue to evolve and keep up with it, except collaboration, working together, keeping your eye on the prize and making sure that it's a process of continuous improvement. But I will say, and to brag a little bit, that I think at OCC we've done a pretty good job of keeping up. We have 5 campuses with tremendous support services at each one of those. And we struggled at first, but I think we were very fortunate in coming together with the initiative of how do you take all of those support services that students rely on, keep them at all 5 campuses for our face-to-face students, but then replicate every single one of them in an online version. And we were able to do that working together, and we call it Virtual Campus. So all of the support services that we offer at our campuses in person, we also offer online. And just when you think that we're going to get a break, you mentioned, I think earlier we talked about cell phones, and that my son is a freshman at Oakland Community College. He was taking his first online course, and I was bragging about how wonderful our support services are, and he whipped out his phone. He said, yeah, but Dad, how do I take the class on here? And how do I do all of those things that you said? I don't want to take it on the computer that you're bragging, feeling so good about. I want to do it on here, maybe at the beach. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So the point is, it's a continuous process of improvement, and I think that's why sharing best practices are important. I think the first step, though, is, and we've reached out, I understand a lot of institutions have reached out to us, and they're looking at our virtual campus and the way that we've done it, and I think that's the key, is for us not to operate in silos, but to share those best practices. And I think the first part was putting all of those services online, and it's worked well. It's worked well for us.
President Keller?
Peter, I'd like to have a conversation with your son because he can do that
All right.
here at Walsh.
He's good.
Can we work on that transfer?
There you go.
I thought we were...
Build that transfer plan right now.
You're going to need an engineering degree.
Details. Russ, I think there's 2 things that I look at, and one is it's always got to be about the student, but the other is it has to be about relationships. So making sure that the faculty and the advisors have the tools that they need, because our advisors work one-on-one with our students to make sure they're following the appropriate path, they're using the appropriate technology, they're finding the right program and the right way it's delivered for them. I think our faculty do an excellent job of, and as does our OIT department, of building into our courses a sense of community, so students don't feel like they're on an island. And when you have that sense of community, when you have a student-to-student interaction, when you have a student-to-faculty interaction, when they're doing virtual office meetings, there's the virtual meeting spaces, those types of things, the students do feel that sense of community, and that allows us to better tailor what type of resources we're going to provide to them, whether it's a faculty contacting an advisor or the student contacting the advisor. One of the things that we've realized is that perhaps our technology was not as effective at doing some of the things that we wanted to do, including recruiting, and so we're moving to Zoom. And I know a number of you probably are already using that technology. But I think making sure that students feel safe, they understand the resources that are available, that making them feel like they're part of the community is one of the priorities that we have.
So, staying on the line of not easy questions. One of the transitions that I have noticed in higher education, as at each of our institutions, we start to evaluate how and if we should engage in online education, and we know that some of you all have been in it for 20 years, are the ways we deal with the problems inherent in delivering education. And having been an adjunct instructor, you all having taught courses yourselves, there will be problems. Either problems from the student's perspective, problems from the faculty's perspectives, and many times those problems will get to your desk as the chief executive. Have you thought about a way that, and I'll put this under the category of what kind of feedback have you received, that's either the same and we learned that we can treat this the same as on ground, or is the way to handle problems that get to your desk from online, are there better best practices to do that as the executive that gets these problems? And we know that when the problems reach these individuals' desks, they're probably at a point where someone needs to make a decision where almost no one is going to be happy with that decision. Maybe even this is just an opportunity to tell war stories from the perspective of the executive, so that those in the field can see what is it like when you get these questions, and have you learned anything particular about how they land on your desk from this space, and what works and what doesn't?
You know, the problems, the changes that technology has brought us that allows for online learning are not dissimilar from the other challenges of educating students in many, many different ways. And as an executive in higher education whose challenge is to allocate resources, we have found, I found it here at Walsh and certainly find it in my current job at Northwood University, that the services our students need and how we distribute them are services that all of our students need, not just our online students. And in fact, even though many of our traditional undergraduate students aren't taking an online course in any given semester, they want and expect services to be made available to them in online formats, and available 24/7 and 7 days a week and 365. And I mean, their expectations are no different than that exclusively online learner. So we can spread the cost of different programs that we have in place to serve our students over all of our populations. I mean, we use Civitas. Some of you, I'm sure, use that, and they're predictive analytics that help us to see and keep our students engaged and to reach out, to have our advisors reach out to them at moments where their data tells them, historically, in different types of students, this is when they're going to kind of hit a wall and going to need some help. But we're able to amortize the cost of that very expensive programming over all of our programming, not just our online programming. And it has been very helpful in every student, undergraduate, graduate, traditional, online learning, international students. It doesn't matter. I mean, they have given us great data and great advice as to when and where we need to intervene based on what they've seen historically and similar populations. So really, it's finding those resources that you can extend across the entire institution that make, you know, these kinds of decisions economic for the institution. I mean, we use Blackboard as our basic learning management system, and our traditional students have a ton of information that they have to gather from Blackboard on a regular basis, not just our online students. So you spread those costs across the entire institution.
How about Marcia and Peter, any war stories from the President's desk, maybe a policy about how quickly a student should respect a response on an online course, how challenges regarding faculty and examinations work, how to handle attendance or not in online coursework? Any ideas, or maybe even throwing it out to some of the people in the field here? Frankly, what I've often done is said, hey, I've said it to Peter before, how are you guys doing this? Is there a better way than we've thought it out? Any insights about what it looks like from your perches? And I do say perch on purpose because sometimes it's lonely up there.
It can be very lonely up there. So two things, Russ, that come to mind. First, I would agree with Keith in that, you know, that's what's really interesting about the services being online, that not only are our distance education students taking advantage of those services, but our traditional students are as well. And that really kind of leads into a challenge that we have, that we hear two things from students all the way, you know, in the surveys. They want more student life, and they want more classes online. So, as the president of the college, I look at that, and that I struggle. How do you do both? How do you create more online learning without losing that feel that you belong somewhere, that you know, you lose that student life aspect? And I think there's nuances that we've worked on to, you know, as far as the look and feel of the experience online, I think matters. But I wouldn't mind, that could be something to kick out to the group to see if they have some thoughts, because that's something that I know at OCC that we struggle with a little bit. And I think it's difficult because, as you mentioned, another challenge that I would like to you know, send out to the group is that, as we mentioned earlier, we have faculty and administration at different phases of this based on their own experiences. And even our traditional students, they're used to in high school their grades being posted immediately online. They go home and they can see you know, exactly how they did on the exam. We have instructors that have been teaching for 30, 40 years, and I have to tell you, I'm a little bit of a traditionalist myself, and when you talk to them, and when I get those complaints at the top about, you know, faculty so-and-so is not posting their grades on D2L, and we talk to that faculty member, and they say, you know what, it doesn't hurt them to learn a little patience. Well, you know, as a dad, I get that, but these are our customers as well. These are our students. So we wrestle with all of those things, and I you know, that might be a topic for the group to weigh in on as well, or maybe Marcia has some thoughts too.
I'm going to go in a little bit different direction. I think one of the things that concerns me is, are we investing in the right technology? And one of the things that we've done is we've created the Tomorrowland Today team, and they're looking at how younger people are learning, what are the emerging technologies, should we be looking to incorporate those, when will it be viable, and that raises a whole host of issues. But one of the things, because 50% of our students are online full-time, and then we have another almost 25% that are doing a mix of traditional classroom and then either hybrid classes or part online courses. So the investment for us has got to have an impact long-term, and it's got to keep us at the cutting edge. And so I think struggling with, do you make an investment now for a short-term fix, or do you wait a little bit longer to do something far more dramatic, is one of the things that we struggle with. And I'm really appreciative for the faculty and our OIT team for the guidance they give me on that.
Well, I have several more questions here, and it occurs to me that the questions that would come from you all would be significantly more valuable than what I would be asking. So After this question, I'll start moving around like Donahue and passing a mic. But I don't see a mic, and I see Dr. Callahan must have just stepped out. Does anyone know?
Get a mic.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You're right in front of me.
I'm here.
Let me ask one more question, and then I'll come steal Peter's mic because he doesn't want to throw it off the table. I saw you go back to the post, and I was worried about you, my friend. I have questions about how we take feedback. I have questions about how faculty have had successes and failures about transitioning. I've got questions about whether your business plan, all these questions can be roped in to several things. But one of the main questions I wanted to get out before I engage the audience is, part of your job is to see the future. And President Kelleher just said she's got a team looking at that. What is on the horizon from the executive's view about the next 5 and 10 years? Where are we going? What should we expect from your view? And I expect maybe some of you all will find some concurrence with that and maybe some discord with that. And my hope is that that will start to engender a conversation after some of you venture a guess to that question.
Well, I think certainly we're going to see more online learning going forward. The marketplace, the real battle in the higher ed marketplace today isn't for the 18-year-old coming out of college. We know there's fewer of them. The marketplace, the growing marketplace, is for the adult learner. And for that individual that maybe had some college but never quite completed either an associate's or a baccalaureate degree, and now find themselves, for a variety of reasons, maybe for their work, that they're being urged to complete that degree so that they can get a promotion and move ahead in their current organization. We find a lot of online learners that come back to us that are racing their own children. That they've always told their children, you have to go and get a college degree, and now their kids are in high school and starting college, and they're thinking, geez, I don't have that degree yet. I better get back out there and be the role model I'm supposed to be as a parent. And they come back into higher education, having been out of it for, in some cases, 20 years. You heard Dr. Callahan talk about the demographics of his students. I mean, we have students in their 50s and even in their 60s and 70s that come back, and their lifestyle dictate that they're only going to be able to take courses online. And when you look at what is happening on a national scale, the huge growth that some of the, Arizona State and its recent announcement. I don't know how many of you were at the Higher Learning Commission meetings earlier this week and last weekend. Arizona State is looking to create a for-profit subsidiary of their public not-for-profit university that is going to be a broker for online learning services with multiple schools within their system, not just Arizona State educational opportunities, but many, many different educational providers, be they public universities, community colleges, independent not-for-profit universities, or even for-profit universities as a part of this system. Very controversial, and lots of debate at the HLC as to whether that's ultimately going to get accreditation, but if you look at their track record at Arizona State, they have a pretty good track record of making things happen, as do some of the other national leaders in online learning. We're seeing this field expand because the market is there to expand to. So we're going to continue to kind of see the changes, and Marcia hit it right on the head, and your son's a great example. I mean, we have a digital divide in terms of the students that partake in online learning. We have young students coming straight out of high school that have taken courses while they're in high school online. They're very savvy with the technology, and they want more, and they want that technology to be on their handheld and not, tying them to other things. We have adult learners in their 40s and 50s that can't manage the technology at all, but they're the strongest learners we could ever ask for. They want to learn every single thing, every single concept that you put out there as faculty. They want to integrate it, they want to understand it, they want to use it in the marketplace. But their skills are very different than that young person who, in many cases, doesn't have the discipline to be an online learner. They've got the technology skills, but they can't meet the deadlines that you put into effective online learning and the many different ways that they have to interact with the faculty and with their fellow students in order to be an effective learner online. So we have a lot of challenges out there, but we're in a market that is only going to continue to grow. And we're going to see more and more change, more and more costs, more and more innovation. Looking to the future, I would bet that all of us as executives have our task forces that are looking out 10 years, 20 years. What are we going to be? How much more brick and mortar do we need at this institution? How much more in evolving technology do we need to invest in, and when do we need to invest in? Those are critical decisions for institutions at this point, even though they may not be implemented for another 3, 4, 5 years, even beyond our tenure as leader. It's a very challenging time, and online learning is leading that. I would say this has been the biggest change in business models in higher education. If you look back historically, we were doing everything pretty much the same in the 1980s and 90s as they had done in 1630 when they started Harvard College. The sage on the stage and an evaluation of some form and a little ceremony with interesting gowns to send them on their way. And then suddenly technology invaded our space. And we are very different institutions today than we were 20 years ago. And we'll be very different institutions again in the next 5, 10, 15 years. Change is hard. It's particularly hard, I think, in academic institutions where we stay fairly rooted to the way we've done things, as I've outlined. But you all have been the agents of change that are making our industry much more dynamic and much more sustainable long term.
I would add, echo all of those thoughts. I would add that I think in general you will see a greater focus, traditional hybrid as well as distance education, greater focus on adult learners. There's a huge demand out there for talent. There's a shortage of workers. We have a declining K-12 population, and we're talking more and more to employers, and they're realizing that they have a workforce already on the payroll. And oftentimes you have adults who maybe need to take one class, maybe they're a degree away, they're excellent workers, and so as part of their retention strategy, I really believe employers will start to retrain their employees like never before. And I think that's where distance education is really going to be powerful, because they can do it from home. These are folks that are working full-time. But what's really interesting too, from a community college standpoint, we do a lot of non-credit training. And so I really see that as a growing field where an employer may send an employee to one class, and maybe they even allow that employee to take the class from work. And we've all gone through webinars before. What would stop us from offering essentially webinars, or maybe multiple webinars in which you obtain a credential, and you could do it from the convenience of your desk or your employer? That may be a benefit the employer offers up. So I really think that you're going to see a greater focus on adult learners. I would agree with that.
I would agree with that, but I'd also say that I'm excited about new opportunities with technology. Reaching students that we haven't reached before, doing so more efficiently, doing so in a more impactful way. I mean, how can we use AI? How can we use virtual reality? How can we put them in these different types of augmented reality opportunities? I mean, what's out there? Could we, how long from now will it be before they can put something up on their computer and all of a sudden there's a hologram with a professor that's right in front of them that can interact with them, and we can bring people from all over the world and we can engage in new ways that we haven't in the past. I'm really excited about what we are going to be able to do with technology, how it will continue to transform education, and I think that's the real key, is for all of us to be open to what the possibilities are.
So what questions might you all have for, and you got a chance, some of you here are in the institutions that these individuals are leading. So I haven't vetted these questions, you guys.
That's right.
Don't blame me.
Rapid fire.
Inside questions.
Yes.
No one from our institutions can ask us our questions.
No hands up from, and no questions from OCC
Yeah,
from
should
you.
I-
okay?
Yeah, exactly. Why isn't my budget bigger?
Please,
No, that's
tell your
coming.
name and where you work.
I didn't expect that. I'm Janice Grant. I've been teaching with North Tech, Macomb, OCC, and about 16 years on campus, about 7 years online. So using Learn, Blackboard, and now Canvas. So was that enough to tell you?
Yeah.
So as an architect, we started in hand sketching and a 3D model. This was years ago. And then when the computer came along, we fought it a little bit, but then we had to ride the wave. We had to start to learn the new technologies, and CAD and BIM and all of this came along. So in the same way as teaching, there are professionals out there that are doing the same thing. Now that we have drone technology in our programs at Macomb, we have virtual reality that we're working with. I can't even believe that in the early 80s, as I graduated with Orange Tech with my master's degree in architecture, we were hand sketching and modeling, and now I'm teaching the advanced 3D modeling where we can put a headset on and actually walk through, and do a walkthrough just the 3D model. So I agree with Marcia 100%. There is that technology there that we have to look at. It won't be long that maybe they will put a headset on and sit right in their classroom and feel like they're there. The other thing is kudos to Macomb and Walsh, because my 20-year-old daughter absolutely loves the online environment at both of those schools. So it's the students that kind of give them feedback and really tell us how it's going. And also I agree with Marcia about the training that faculty should go through, because there was a time when we just kind of asked for a shell, right? We put it up there and we created it ourselves without that much support, although the ones Tech, Diane was awesome to work with. Recently I went through this process with Macomb, Tom and Sandy were a great team to work with. We went through this kind of quality matters kind of rubric. And it was a little bit tough, but in the end, to have those things in place like she was talking about, the class is way better now, because there were things, those things you don't know, things that you think you know what you don't know kind of thing. So the teams can help us as faculty to build those. So kudos to Macomb and Walsh for excellent online resources. I've been teaching, like I said, for 16 years to my daughter, and I always have a discussion about professors. If you guys have kids, you probably know what I'm talking about, right? They come to complain about this and that, but for a lot of it's all good. So when she comes to me and says that she really loves the environment at Macomb and Walsh, that's kudos to you guys.
Well, thank you. The credit goes to the team.
Yeah, Sarah was have the classes here as well.
Well, thank you for that feedback. Other questions? This gentleman here in the middle is going to test my legs, but I think you would hand. I would throw it and then break one of Marcia's piece of equipment.
Thank you. Sean Moore from Oakland University, please hold your applause. And so my question is this, going back to online student services, have any of you allocated resources for extra funding to get staff to do some extra nights and weekend hours, do some of the different virtual things you had to do? Did you specifically say, we're going to do this, we're going to allocate more resources for that?
We did. I mean, there's no question. Using the example of help desk support, which needs to be there whenever the student needs it. The example of career services and all of the other. I mean, we've had to add people, quite frankly, in order to cover the time frames. I mean, we used to cover those things basically from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. That doesn't cut it for the online population. So we've had to add staff. Some of our staff have had to change hours. Some of our staff have been compensated for working additional hours when they're providing services that meet the needs of online students.
Ditto.
Yeah, I would say the same. I would also add that and we were just talking about this, we probably need to do more as this continues to grow. in order to, we're putting a greater focus on working with faculty, training them a little quicker, bringing more courses online, and that will require more talent, more people, and so that's something that we're looking at as well. So I think it's a continuous process of improvement, and it requires talent. And so we've done that, and we'll continue to.
We have another question back here, but I want to just take the opportunity this is the only question I'm going to answer. I have been proposed increased spending for this program in my institution, and I am intuitively supportive of it. But what I have found, and I would throw this out to you all who are fighting in this space for, and I sense the underlying point of your question is, are you going to support us? And when I get those questions, what I have found is this is a unique opportunity in your institutions, if it's anything like mine, and you might find some similarities across campuses. We can actually start to work together to build a model in your college for thoughtfully deciding when an institution's part deserves resources. You all have the resources to develop, actually I think, and I'd like to have this in my institution, a form that describes for me why as an executive I should increase resources and the return that you can deliver. And then what I think can happen is if done well, and this may already exist at my friends' institutions, we can let that move to other parts of the institution so we can be a more thoughtful institution, at least from the president's desk, when an on-ground part of our institution wants more resources. I can say, hey, well, look at this fantastic form that was developed for me. It helps me make the decision about whether we need faculty here or here. And I think you all are so well placed to develop that for your institutions. And if you haven't done it already, or if you have, please tell me because I need the form. But that's where I would really like to see this group of people help us as administrators. I'm sorry I took your airtime, sir.
It's okay. Thank you. I've been Pete Basili from Washington Community College, and I too am Italian, so I do apologize if I hit you guys. So I applaud you all for being here and actually sharing your experiences and so forth, and we appreciate your leadership as well. The one thing I wanted to talk about was that I'm working very closely now with our Dean of Diversity, Access, and Inclusion, as well as with our Dean of Advising and Counseling and so forth. I have to applaud my team for the work that they're doing in online learning, but one of the concerns we still have, especially that whole difference between traditional and non-traditional students. The whole non-traditional statement now is really the new traditional. I mean, that's what we're really experiencing. So, especially when you have that cultural divide in a traditional setting and or generational divide that's in there now. The biggest challenge that we're trying to, overcome collaboratively in our institutions, how to best get those students to assimilate in that online environment. So if you think about how a student between, different cultures and different generations sitting in the classroom environment, and they're trying to figure out how to assimilate in that personal box, that space. But now all of a sudden we're trying to translate that to an online environment, which we're already setting up a barrier for them to begin with. And so we're trying to figure out how to bring down those walls. So if you have any experience in that, I would appreciate it.
One of the things that I think our advisors and our OIT team and our faculty, they work collaboratively. And so when they find that a student is struggling because of, for example, technical skills, OIT may wind up working with that student one-on-one to get them to where they need to be. Or they'll work with the advisor to say, this is a student that probably needs to go from an online class to a hybrid class, or a hybrid class back into a traditional classroom. So I think it's the collaboration, as you just mentioned, within the institution that's really key to making that successful.
So I would say that happens at OCC all the time, where we may bring faculty, counselors, bring those students back and work with them face-to-face on campus. But technology is also making that a little easier to do it remotely with Zoom, and our counselors use Zoom all the time. And so technology is allowing us to do a little bit more face-to-face, real-time to help those students. But oftentimes you find our counselors working with those students and bringing them into more of a hybrid environment where it's a little more balanced for them.
We all have those same challenges, and while technology is changing everything, technology can be part of the solution, as has been said. I mean, our faculty, when their academic advisors see a student that's struggling, they do try to very much personalize the education and spend time with them, face-to-face via Blue Jeans or whatever technology might be available. A lot of our students at an institution like ours are all over the globe. So bringing them back into the classroom environment is not an option. We have to be able to work with them where they are and meet their needs, or we lose them. There's no question about that. So we work very, very hard to personalize the online experience where we see students that are struggling, whether it's technology, whether it's the discipline and time management and those kinds of things. We actually have a required course at the front end where we share, and I think a lot of your institutions do, where we share for our online students all of the various resources that are out there and available, and help them knowledgeable so that they know where to turn. They don't just sit there and stew and say, I don't get it, I don't know what to do next, I'm stymied, I'm stuck. They have resources, and as I said earlier, Civitas for us has been very helpful in predicting students that are going to have challenges and getting in front of them before that even starts.
Question back here on the left as you look out.
I'm Chad Nijkamp, I'm a faculty member at OCC, so no specific OCC questions. But I was interested in the opening remarks, it was noted, third students want to be traditional classes, third students want to be hybrid between, and then third want to be online. Where do you see it going in regards to recruitment? We're all regional institutions here, we're all dealing with the same stuff numbers-wise. Are we going after kids in Michigan, kids nationally, kids internationally? What kind of students are we going to go for with these classes, and how far are we going to go?
If we knew that, we'd be doing a lot better than any of us are right now. It's such a changed environment right now. You have to be able to meet the needs of a variety of students to be successful. And in our case, I expect we will always have traditional undergraduate campuses. Our campus, in our case, we have one traditional undergraduate campus that we bring students basically straight out of high school to, and they're coming for an educational experience, they're coming for a social experience, they're coming for experiential learning and some of the things that we do uniquely and I think quite well that really give them great value. At the other end of the spectrum, we've got adult learners that are 50 years old, they've already experienced so much of life and different things. Their learning needs are very different. So meeting the needs of all of those with the resources we have is the clear challenge. There's no one silver bullet that I have found. There's no one piece of technology that is working today, and so much of it is changing, as Marcia has said. I've recently convened, we have academic advisory councils for all of our business disciplines. And so we get a lot of graduates and HR professionals and even senior executives in different corporations that will come to campus and help us to focus on our finance program or our accounting program or management, marketing, whatever it might be. And what they're telling us, a large number of corporations are very concerned about their reputations going forward because artificial intelligence is going to eliminate large segments of their current employees. If you're in a distribution business, if you have warehouses, robots are going to do that job in 5 years from now. So they desperately want corporate training and educational programs that are going to give those employees an opportunity to have a job 5 years from now when the job they're in is eliminated. And they're willing to partner with us in a number of different ways to meet the needs for that specific, which is almost exclusively, in our case, an online constituency, because these are people all over the globe in a variety of locations that we can't possibly set up on-ground education for in every location.
Chad, I'll answer your question. I think there were really two parts to your question, maybe I heard, which was, theoretically, distance education can be scaled out across the world, across the globe. I think that's more likely to happen for Northwood and Walsh than it would be a community college because we levy a local property tax millage, in theory. I'm not really sure where that's going to go, but I think it's more likely. As far as the distribution of online learning, the 1/3, distance ed, 1/3 hybrid, 1/3 traditional, I'm not exactly sure where those percentages will lie, but that too I think is slightly different for a community college because we are an open access institution. It's likely that our students may be more likely to be traditional or hybrid. They may need more of those services that are available that are very difficult to replicate anytime soon online. So that could change. So I think what I do know is distance education, hybrid, will increase in percentage, but I think it'll probably look a little different for community colleges versus universities. And then I think the future of distance ed, Keith brought up something that's interesting that I've been thinking about, and I really think that's the real wild card here, that we really don't know what artificial intelligence will do, not only to the future of education, but to distance education. And what do I mean by that? When we talk to experts out there, and I've talked to a lot of businesses, and I've heard the similar statistic where 50% of their employees will not be doing what they're doing today. And it's going to change. And when you think about the role of education in the future, it's really to allow employees, train them in new technologies that we don't even know what those are yet. And two, to differentiate themselves with stronger interpersonal communication, which is the last thing or the hardest thing for artificial intelligence to replicate. So how do you train better communication remotely? I'm not sure what that looks like. So all of these things are real wild cards, I think, in the future.
I have a question in the center.
Hello, Barbara Kanaka from Oakland Community College. I'm the esports person. I do think we need an esports team. So anyways, get those kids out of the basement, get them on campus, socialize them. But my question here is going to go back to those high school kids that you seem to be ignoring. So I think that there's a big disconnect between, we're all talking to one another at the university level, but when you go to all these meetings and like McCall with the Michigan Association of Computer Users and Learning, you see what the high schools are doing. I mean, there's a big battle between Microsoft and Google, and I think Google's winning. They all use a Chromebook, they are very entrenched in Google, and then they come to us and we don't do anything with that. When you go to some of these meetings, these college instructors are saying, when you go to college, all your classrooms have computers, and I'm sitting there going, ha, ha, ha. No, we don't. So I think that even meeting more with the K-12 people, I don't think we do enough networking with them to set things up so that it is a better flow as we go through. And I think the next thing is that with, it's like with the technology and stuff, if you think, since all these kids are using a $200 Chromebook, you know what? Their parents that you want to be as an adult learner are going to be very familiar with that Chromebook. So I think the kid, why just say here, here? I think we could rope the whole family in if we approach this right. So Peter, for us, and other maybe community colleges, because I think we're in the same boat, what things do you think, or experiences do you think that we could set up so that we could engage more with the high schools?
Well, thank you, Barbara. And I'll say, Peter, to the extent you want to use it, we're over time.
Drop the mic. I can answer, maybe just a really brief, then I'll answer very briefly. Great points. We were looking into the esports. I think there's a lot of things that we can do to better engage students. One of the things that we I don't know if we've made an offer or not yet, but at OCC, we have created a position which is essentially a liaison between the college and the high school counselors to not only manage our dual enrollment and early college programs, but do the types of things, Barb, that you're talking about. And because K-12 is so important and that transition is so important, so that we're speaking the same language. And the counselors, and our counselors have done a phenomenal job in the past of reaching out to the high school counselors to help, because those high school counselors are so influential in the lives of those high school students. But our counselors are swamped. I mean, they've got a lot of work, and so we're really looking to have this liaison, one person that the high schools can go to contact. So I don't know if that answers your questions.
Well, I guess I'd like to see more experiences where we start to have some kind of a annual maybe tech meeting where maybe we sponsor it. We invite a lot of the local high school K-12 teachers to interact with our teachers, so that we can start to work on some of these technology experiences together, so that Because I go to these meetings because I want to know what kind of product I have walking in the door.
I see,
So
true.
I think I need to learn
Sure.
about them. And so, and I don't think I'm unique in that. I think a lot of us need to learn about what it is that our predecessors are doing, that we can help each other out.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I think we can do more to link our instructors up with the high school teachers so that they are able to learn from each other. I think it's a great idea.
So this is a great segue. This is the kind of conversation that we all want when we have a conference. We want to be able to take the conversation into the hallway and on beyond. I'm also glad that Dr. Callahan invited the people of the stature that you got here before, because you have access to decision makers, which is something I hope Barbara and your colleagues can do. I know that these individuals are open to that. And finally, I'll just say to you, and the Chancellor here, who are all on board with what you guys have been fighting to do. So please do thank them for me for coming here to take your questions, and also thank you for giving us your time to let us talk to you about what we see in the future. Thanks for letting me host, and I enjoyed the time.
Thank you.